Hello everyone, please take a seat and let me tell you a tale from the mist of history, about an individual who, while being a hero to his own country, felt like a traitor to another. Warning: this story, like many stories about war, are not for the faint of heart, but I feel this one is more so than others. The danger that the Sultan's soldiers, after a failed attempt to block the Suez Canal in 1915, in February, the attempt to attack this waterway, which is vital to the British and protected by 250,000 troops, is almost over. Now the opportunity aroused to break out from the south and once again inject teeth into the Ottoman Empire. The British exodus moved the Turks from the currents that had been underground until now. There was a possibility that Arab nationalism would break out. Since the 19th century, the Arabs, who obeyed the Turkish authorities, experienced a cultural revival that was further strengthened in the last century by the demands of self-government. The construction of the railway connecting Damascus and Medina was justified by the Turks' desire to help pilgrims be present in Mecca, but to assess the Arab train lines as control elements and to seek to transport the Ottoman army known for these and other major matures. In the unspeakable case of the Arabs, the explosion lacked only a small spark and squeaked the apparent Turkish weakness against the power of the Allies. The British intended to use this stir to satisfy their own interests. Thomas Edward Lawrence, an unprofessional but very talented soldier who was nicknamed Lawrence of Arabia, was assigned to this task. The man with expressive facial features, who was commissioned to lay out the foundations of the Ottoman Empire, could not boast a heroic appearance. He was only 166 centimeters tall and small. However, his physical shortcomings were outweighed by his courage and determination. His love for the Arabs was especially strengthened after an archaeological expedition to Syria. Then in 4 years, he walked 400 kilometers. The secret services rushed to take advantage of Lawrence's excellent knowledge of the region, and in 1914, he was hired. When the war broke out, he joined the military and was sent to British military intelligence in Cairo. 1916 June the 5th, the Arabs revolted against Turkish rule. Lawrence was sent to negotiate with the Sheriff of Mexico and the main Arab leader, Hussein, who gave a written English guarantee that an Arab state ruled by the Hassan family would be recognized after the war. The Arabs also made claims to what is now Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan and Iraq. The British agreed to meet their demands, but remained strategically important regions, the Syrian coast along the Mediterranean, Lebanon and southern Iraq. The Arabs did not oppose such a cut, and the pact was approved. As Hussein did not trust the English word of honor, he demanded that the agreement be recorded in writing. The Arabs later used the letters sent by Hussein and the British commissioner in Cairo to discuss the content of the pact as a means of blackmailing, demanding that the British pay for their services. Lawrence taught one of Hassan's 4 sons, Prince Faisal, the most effective tactics against the Turks, guerrilla warfare. With his attacks, he not only panicked the enemies, but also overthrew the backbone of the Ottoman Empire, the railway line between Damascus and Medina. But the British played a double game, promising the Hassan family, which was also their rival. London had promised to help establish a Jewish state in Palestine and was also negotiating with France on the division of the crumbs of the Ottoman Empire, which reduced the possibility of forming an Arab state. Lawrence was also involved in the machinations of this site, but naively believed that his countrymen would appreciate the important contribution of the Arabs to the British victory and keep the word given. Having nothing to do with these political traps, the British Army, led by Sir Archibald Murray in 1916, began attacks in December and took several Turkish positions in the Sinai Desert. 1917 in March the British almost occupied Gaza, but Murray withdrew at a time when the province was already about to surrender. The next month he tried unsuccessfully to correct the error, but suffered a lot of losses. In general, however, in 1917, the Allies on this front were not bad. A fresh wind was blown to the British by the determined Sir Edmund Allenby, who replaced Murray. Initially, Allenby, who had previously fought in the trenches of Flanders, accepted the new task as punishment for failure, but the opportunity to conquer Jerusalem before Christmas turned into a serious impetus for him. But before occupying the Holy City, it was necessary to conquer several strategic points. The most important of these was the port of Aqaba, which was planned to be conquered in August of the same year. The intervention of Lawrence of Arabia led to the victory of the Arabs by crushing 1,200 Turkish crews. Lawrence dared to cross the front line to grab his Poussin syrup. However, the Turks got stuck in the city of Dara, as far as is known, there. Suffered brutal bullying, of which he never told anything, but fled with the help of a doctor who sympathized with the Arabs. After Lawrence recovered, the Arabs led by him continued to horrify the Turks with attacks. At the time, there was growing concern in Berlin about the failure of the German allies to keep the British close. General Falkenhayn, perhaps to redeem his failure in Verdun, in 1917. In May, along with another 65 officials, arrived with a mission to organize a Turkish front in Palestine. Falkenhayn established a strong line of defense between Gaza and Beersheba. Upon learning of the German intervention, the British thought they were urging Turkey to launch an attack in Sinai, so they began to prepare more quickly for the attack. October the 13th, Sir Allenby fiercely attacked Beersheba. The Australian light cavalry crushed the Turks, while the British took a crucial strategic position. The next day after the massive bombing, the Turks gave up Gaza to the enemies. A couple of days passed, and after a tenacious struggle, the Allies came to the port of Jaffa. General Allenby's goal of entering Jerusalem by Christmas became within reach. Just a month before the Christian feast, the British with him staged the first attack on the Holy City, which the Turks repulsed. However, a much smaller number of Turkish soldiers foretold a sad ending. Falkenhayn decided that instead of desperately defending Jerusalem, it would be better to assemble a new line of defense further north, so on the 8th of December, began evacuating his soldiers. 3 days later, 2 weeks earlier than originally planned, Allenby achieved his goal, proudly, as if this battle had had a crucial historical significance. The English general marched at the forefront of his army in a city that had been at stake for many countries for centuries. Jerusalem fell into British hands. After the triumph, Allenby's soldiers began to strengthen their front. 1918 attacked Palestine again in the spring. In February, it occupied the million cities of Jericho, and in March, the city of Amman. For Falkenhayn, it was a huge failure. The general completely lost confidence and was sent to Lithuania. In September, a decisive battle between Megiddo, or Armageddon, took place on this front. The British crushed the 8th Turkish Army Regiment and paved the way to Haifa, Beirut, Aleppo and Damascus. The shrewd Turkish army sprang from an unstoppable British advance. The Australian light cavalry was surrounded by more than 5,000 enemy soldiers, thousands more of whom surrendered along the roads used by British cars. Ottoman confidence was with the tribe. The 11,000 Turks, ready to defend Damascus, waited patiently in their barracks for allies to show up. 1918 October, the first Allenby's army triumphantly entered the city. The Ottoman Empire rapidly disintegrated. The Arabs, who fought together with the British, did not rejoice. They finally defeated a long-hated enemy. However, on October the 4th, smiles froze on the Arab faces. Allenby informed Prince Faisal of an agreement with France under which the countries were to share the conquered territories, and no mention was made of the Arab state. For the Arabs, the freedoms were only empty promises. Lawrence, realizing that his Arab friends had been deceived, desperately tried to prevent the implementation of the secret agreement, but France categorically refused to share the new estates. Disappointed and betrayed, Lawrence joined the British Air Force under a false name but was quickly recognized by all sorts of evidence, which made him obviously very uncomfortable. A year later, after hiding his identity again, he joined the army, but even here he did not escape many vigilant glances, though trying to remain unrecognized. Lawrence went through this difficult period drowning in depression. As if by an unwritten rule, great heroes who were not reached by enemy bullets were usually killed during some stupid event. Lawrence once rode a motorcycle from a post office with 2 children on the street. Trying not to get in their way, he threw himself to the side and fell on his head, injuring his head. Having been in a coma for 6 days, 46 Lawrence in 1935. May the 19th died. Lawrence is arguably one of the most fascinating and controversial personalities in military history. His death with him beyond finally carried out the romantic conception of war, to which he had already stretched his nails in the trenches of the Western Front. In the life stories of the exceptional personalities of Lawrence or Fondadov, the nobility and fair play found themselves between hatred and revenge. On better thinking, fair play was unrealistic as a mirage in the desert, because it ended in the same result as other fights, bloodshed for reasons not worthy of such a sacrifice. As per usual, please don't take my word for a fact. The last thing I want is to misguide you. Nevertheless, I hope you liked this tale of history, and I hope to see you again.